Joining us now is Sharon O'Halloran. She is an expert on the banking sector and on financial regulation. She's a professor at the School of International and Public Affairs at Columbia University. And Sharon, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So if you were able to talk to Jamie Dimon today, what questions would you ask?
Basically, how do you take the lemon and make it lemonade? That is, if you could write these regulations and the rules that are coming down, how would you do it to prevent this from happening again? Now, his response really should be, I need simple, clear rules and regulations that I can comply with and that I can prove to my regulators that I am in compliance. And I think if he hammers on that point, he's really trying to say that we will work with you and we will get these rules and regulations right.
What's wrong with the rules and regulations that have been proposed to this point?
Well, if
you're somebody who's in favor of regulation, but clean and clear regulation.
Yeah, pro-market regulation that really focuses on disclosure, transparency, being very clear in how they can implement it, and following up with strong and effective compliance. And right now, if you just look at the Volcker rule as being proposed, it's over 300 pages. It's really every exception under the sun that you could possibly come in with, and it's going to be gamed. And therefore, if it's unless it's concise and clearly stated how the banks need to regulate and then how the regulators can regulate them, it's going to be ineffective.
There are some questions, even before we get to any of these new regulations, about what happened this time around and when the regulators were there the whole time, how they didn't know any of this was happening. Andrew indicated earlier that part of the problem could be that the regulators were given wrong information, that the managers at JP Morgan didn't know the correct information and they were passing on incorrect information to the regulators. So how do you even, I mean, something like this can't be fixed if the people at the top of the bank don't know what's happening, correct?
There's a couple of things going on. One, there is ambiguity as to what pieces of information have to be disclosed at various points with the new rules. So let's just set that aside.
Yeah, but let's forget about the new rules. Let's talk about the rules as they exist today.
And so therefore the banks knowing what they need to disclose is difficult, and it is, and you see lots of times them arguing what pieces of data have to be given to which agency and so forth and so on. So that I think there is some ambiguity now even in the implementation of those rules, and that really does need to be cleared out. Second, what you do see is, in fact, at JP Morgan, just in publicly available information, there was a real shuffling of a lot of key players going on over the last 2 years who are real institutional players. It almost became like musical chairs where the person without the seat was either forced out or left. And this had a lot of implications on one, such as direct reports right up to Jamie Dimon. You also see that they changed their risk metrics and how they use it. So what's the information that they were evaluating their own risk internally? And third, it really made accountability and oversight difficult within the institution itself.
But there's a lot of that going on Wall Street, and historically has. So you can't have a system that rest upon people staying in their jobs for forever.
I think that's correct. And therefore, what you do need to do is establish internal systems of reporting, of disclosure that's clear and concise across the institution that they can then hand to their own internal supervisors so that they know that they're in compliance. And if you look at the matrix of what an institution needs to do to be in compliance at all these different levels, it's very complex.
Oh, it's complex. There's no doubt about it. Now, you talk about wanting simple and clear regulation.
That's correct.
Does Dodd-Frank qualify?
Dodd-Frank, I would say, would exasperate many of the trends that we have seen building up over the last 50 years. In fact, it increases the number of overlapping jurisdictions of the agencies. It creates, in addition, more veto gates, and then that is agencies have to sign off to do actions, and at the same time, it politicizes the process. It moves authority from the independent agencies to the more political cabinet level agencies like the Treasury. That just makes the system even more dysfunctional.
But we have to be realistic. We're not going to repeal Dodd-Frank, are we?
No, but you can clean out and be very precise about the information lines, about the sources of data. They need a common depository where each of those pieces of information come, and then the agencies can select that, and they see the same information. These are all mechanisms that can be done through rules in the existing framework.
Sharon, it's Andrew Sorkin down in D.C.
Yes.
I'm just curious, when you think about whether regulators should have been able to spot the risk involved in this trade, should have they? And I ask it in the context that, JP Morgan and other big banks are making loans every day to corporations, to individuals, and I don't expect, and maybe I'm wrong, that even on some of the biggest loans that regulators are testing the loans themselves, let alone these trades.
I do believe that they have a standard and they have a set of criteria that they have to meet. So I do believe they're in compliance at that fundamental level. Should they have known about this risk? Well, you're correct. They're only going to be able to act on the information that they're given. And if the information that they're given is faulty, either because of faulty risk metrics or changes in those standards that they haven't been informed about, that in fact will limit their capacity. We also have to understand that the agencies themselves are hamstrung in the ways in which the regulations set up their ability to do their job. Again, they need different types of approvals to do this. They need they have overlapping jurisdictions, so this makes their functioning difficult. We also see just right now at the CFTC, their budget is being proposed to be cut. And therefore, the resources that are available to these agencies to do their job is also limited.
Sharon, I want to thank you very much for coming in and joining us today. We appreciate your time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Also, a programming note for you. We will be talking to Senate Banking Committee Ranking Member Richard Shelby. That's coming up at 8 a.m. Eastern Time.